Thank you very much for this heartwarming welcome and for these words. I'm not going to talk with you about the Economic and Monetary Union, but I'm going to talk about how to cope with flooded input. Constantly beeping messages, incessant breaking news of the most depressing sort, wars, incidents, accidents, disasters, endless commercials that hammer into your mind that you should buy something that is probably not necessary, a good or a service. Insincere faces with insincere voices that hope to influence your spending behavior. Repetitive ads at that. Once the first message has been broadcast, a short, brief repetition comes to hammer into your minds what you should do. It's like Stalinist propaganda in communist times. The similarity I see between communism and the current phase of capitalism. All this flooded input is not only personally, but in my mind also socially harmful. For beware, who is earning from the attention economy? There are interests there, commercial, political, and geopolitical interests that want to influence where your money goes and where your viewpoints goes, and they undermine, in my viewpoint, free societies. Moreover, the Overton window works here. The Overton window is a phenomenon described by a political scientist and libertarian, Joseph Overton. You see his picture here, which concerns the moving from outside mainstream to center stage of debate of certain topics. Joseph Overton pleaded for think tanks to bring in more extreme views as policies to be pursued that would slowly move the window of opportunity for those more extreme views to center stage. We have seen this phenomenon play out in politics, but also in social mores. Just a very anecdotal example. When I was young, swearing on screen was simply not done. You didn't see that, you didn't hear that. And then slowly we moved to gaping audiences and beeps and F ... to the current situation where swearing is almost normal. A widespread utterance. Our exposure to overload thus, in my view, has not only a personal but also a social dimension. How to focus on what's important in life and not dance on its service. How to ensure that your mind is focused and not distracted. How to keep hope and trust and make sense. And how to help avoid society going off the cliff. Allow me to share with you my own 7-point program, which is not a panacea. It's just what I find a useful approach to follow. Don't expect any nostalgia for the 1950s and the 1960s, or the 1970s for that part, when a sole television set without commercials and a landline phone were the main intrusions into one's life. Give and take the occasional letter which was delivered daily. I am someone who thinks that developments have both positive and negative aspects. Electricity can light up a house and kill its occupant. Radio can broadcast beautiful music and also calls for the most heinous violence. And even, let me go to the printing press that was reviled when it was introduced centuries ago for undermining social order and bringing falsehood to society, was that also brought new ideas and news to people that were, before that, unaware of that. Before I tell you more about my 7-point approach, 2 things to warn you of. I'm not an expert. I'm an expert on economic and monetary union, and I studied sociology, but I'm not an expert on this. I just share my own views. And also, when I say you, I include I, because we're in this together. The first of the 7-point program, first step, is to observe, to take a step back from immersion into the constant bombardment that we undergo normally, and to look at what something that you see or hear does to your mind. This screen is now off, so I will probably go and look back once in a while because this screen doesn't work anymore, for your information. But not only look at what input does to your mind, also observe your bodily reactions and take care to notice what the interest is of what you are doing and seeing. Do I need it for my job? Do I need it for my safety? Do I need it to function? Or is this something that speaks to my curiosity, which I would think is a good thing, or to my urge to seek out all kinds of things that excite and stir emotions? Or is there even a question of validation, that when I look at things, I'm validated in my personal views or in the fact that something I uploaded has been seen again and given a like? Contemplate on what you want out of life and whether what you take in serves these purposes. Second element. This is some background reading. Second element, going on a diet. Just as you are mindful of what you take into your mouth, be mindful of what you accept into your mind. When you're weighing calories and reducing carb intake and considering the harm that is done in the production of your food, why then not also look at what your mental food is and diminish and ration what you take in? This involves limiting, as I said, stimuli, but also timing getting information from the internet. You become what you eat, but you also become what you watch. Violent content, often presented tongue-in-cheek as something that is humorous or not to be taken seriously, seeps deeply into our minds and makes us more irritable and forgetful of our moral compass. We then, bombarded by angry content, come to forget our inborn goodness and kindness. We've forgotten how to be alone with our thoughts or to observe our thoughts, and I think it's time to go back to that state. On a diet means limiting, as I said, your input, also rationing it over the day and over certain periods of time. And when it comes to news, making sure that you try and ensure that the intake from news is even-handed, trustworthy, and in a while also look at news coming from sources that you would normally not watch or read, because the algorithms try to bring you into a certain bubble. What works, dietarily speaking, very good for me is going on a digital Sabbath. Every Friday evening, I start to refrain from taking in the news and cut off social media. And I do that for 25 hours, the whole Saturday, until Sunday morning. Come Sunday morning, I often reflect whether I have missed the biz and buzz of it all. Step number 3, positive news. Try to focus specifically on news that is positive, videos that are uplifting, and try to follow inspiring people, humans that uplift, explain, and share experiences. Here are some instances of possible positive news sources. Going to step number 4. Exercise to relax the mind. Here, partially it's going outdoors. We've seen that in a previous presentation also. Going outdoors, go into nature, sit in a park, go to the beach, watch the clouds, and do sports. Swimming is what makes me feel a completely different person for at least half a day, but any sport will do. collective, team sport, or individual sport, outdoors, indoors, physical activity has this enormously positive impact on the mind. Gym time should be minimalistically mobile. Consider starting meditation on a regular practice to observe and not to judge one's thoughts. Step number 5 is to contribute, to not only be passively bombarded by outside influences, but also to make this world a slightly better place, however minimally, however locally. It gives me agency. It makes me feel that I can contribute something to the world. This element is inside out. Here one's own talents and preferences come into play. When you have green hands, embellish your balcony or do some gardening. When you're a good listener, hear out the complaint of a relative or a friend. When outside in the street, notice a stranger and greet him or her to make them feel less anonymous. Activism can range from volunteering for any cause, a charity, a church, a sports club, to much wider things such as a political cause, to giving, zakat, maser, tenth, are mentioned also on the slide. Whatever the format, that is immaterial. It is about agency. It is about contributing oneself and no longer being completely bombarded by outside influences. To me, in these times, giving voice to my concerns and ideals is unavoidable. Standing up for connection, a word that we've heard more this evening, for freedom, for peace, for rights and for nature are inescapable. However strong the tide, swimming against the stream serves a purpose, nay, is even unavoidable if we're not to drown collectively. My urging then to you and to myself to limit my time and our time on social media does not mean cutting off completely. I come to number 6, bridging the divide, opening up to others' views. This element is not compulsory, so to say, it's optional, but recommended in times of division. And it also helps you to come out of your bubble. What this means is, if you should be able to do so, to listen to and to read viewpoints not your own. That does not mean embracing those viewpoints, but seeing the shared humanity and perhaps also trying to understand where those viewpoints come from. Be inspired by people who forgive. And bridging the divide not only opens your heart to the other view, but also informs you about the way of thinking of someone different from your own viewpoint, and therefore to know your adversary. Final point, going full circle, back to square one, observation, but this time at a deeper level. The level that informs you about your coping practice. Does it need to be amended, or is it okay for me? And about one's role in life. How to contribute, how to use one's unique talents to serve oneself and the wider world. Perhaps observation brings us to a consideration of wired minds, an awareness of unity of minds. We're all wired together at a deep level of ultimate consciousness. The final word I give to the Dalai Lama: open your heart to change, but never forget your loving kindness. Thank you.